everyone, in today's video I am reviewing my first 5-star read of 2026, which was Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. Now, I already had this book on my TBR, but I turned to it as my third read of the year after a couple of lacklustre reads before this. Now, I have read a couple of books by R.F. Kuang before. The first of those was Babel, and the second is the first instalment in her The Poppy War trilogy. So, I already knew I loved her writing style, and I was keen to try her more contemporary and well-known title. Here are some details about the book, and then I'll get into sharing my thoughts on this one for you. Athena Liu is a literary darling, and June Hayward is literally nobody. When Athena dies in a freak accident, June steals her unpublished manuscript and publishes it as her own under the ambiguous name Juniper Song. But as evidence threatens June's stolen success, she discovers exactly how far she will go to keep what she thinks she deserves. What happens next is entirely everyone else's fault. Now, this book is about just over 300 pages, so quite easy to read, and as I will be telling you in this review, I read this book quite quickly. So I really got on, especially with the narrative style, which was really easy to read. It had lots of nice short chapters that had you reading the next one and the next one and the next one. Now we go into Yellowface kind of knowing what happens at the end, but that doesn't really matter because what this book is about is how June goes from effectively stealing from Athena. June has an interesting relationship with Athena that evolves over the course of the book, and the way June kind of memorializes her character, but also in the way she kind of justifies her behavior. We start off this book where June describes Athena as quite distant. She's always off bigwigging, and because she's well known, she's effectively made it, and June is jealous, is what it comes down to. So she often describes her as quite distant, but they have a tenuous meet-up now and then, and it just so happens that on one of these meetups that Athena has her freak accident. So that's how June even ends up involved in the first place. But it's interesting to see how June justifies her relationship with Athena over the course of time, and using her name as well, and using her friendship status that she effectively tries to have up more and more throughout the book as a means to both justifying what she's done, but also to kind of elevate her own success. So it's an interesting dynamic, and June is also a very interesting character in that I enjoyed seeing how she kind of justifies her behaviour over the course of the book. So she starts from an attitude of that it would be criminal effectively for this manuscript to go unpublished, and that she would be doing the world a favour. And it kind of spirals from there, and I don't want to give away too much, but the way she changes her justifications and makes herself out that she's done the right thing, it's okay, and her doubts over that over the course of the book, are really interesting to read about. So I really kind of enjoyed this element of her characterization. It's hard to nail down character development in a book where you already know what's going to happen, but I think this internal dialogue and conflict we get from June throughout does an excellent job of kind of bridging that gap. Now, Yellowface is an interesting read because it's also quite culturally sensitive, but it also opens a window really to kind of cultural sensitivities that are in play right now. So it's quite modern in its approach. I feel it does a good job of reading the room currently, as of early 2026. I think cultural minorities would definitely get their back up about a an individual not from their minority, shall we say, or any minority in June's case, being the person to tell their story and represent them. So we're definitely not in a world where I think that's okay. And so I kind of enjoyed the relevance, if you like, of this book in terms of our modern society. Now, I read this book in just a matter of a few days, but actually I read over half of this book on one Saturday afternoon. So if that doesn't tell you how readable this book is, then I don't know what does. It is very easy to read in terms of the kind of language it uses. It's very contemporary, very uncomplicated. And I mean, I suppose I say that from the perspective of having read some of her more detailed books like Babel and The Poppy War in terms of their world building. Those books, as great as they are, I think because they're quite heavy, they're maybe not so easy to sit and read for long stints, but that's not the case with Yellowface at all. It's very unlike those earlier books, but it doesn't matter. If there's anything that Yellowface has showed me, is that R.F. Kuang is a really good writer across like a broad variety of styles. She is now like an auto-buy author for me because I think she is very good at what she does, and I'm going to like pretty much anything she writes. She always kind of has a cultural slant to what she's kind of writing, and maybe liking to represent less mainstream kind of perspectives, I suppose. You know, she represents the minority, and she does so very well. And given her heritage, you know, that makes sense for her to do. And obviously kind of the background message of Yellowface is that maybe she is the Athena who can do this sort of thing, whereas there are plenty of other more privileged authors who maybe that message doesn't come across in the same way. If you are looking for a reasonably quick contemporary read, but with its own kind of like important message, then Yellowface is perfect. As I said, this is my first 5-star read of 2026. I absolutely loved it, and I hope you do too. That's it from me on my thoughts of this book. I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and if you'd like to see more of these videos, I would love if you could subscribe to my new channel, and I'll obviously be sharing my thoughts on more books, but also giving you ideas of what's coming up on my reading list. I'm also taking part in some reading challenges, and I'll be announcing a challenge I'm carrying forward into March this year, later this week. So if you want to see more on that, I would love to see you there. Thanks for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed my thoughts on Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. Have you read this book or any other books by R.F. Kuang? Let me know in the comments. Until then, bye for now.